Day 2 of rookie camp and the beginning of training camp is in the books. We got to hear from Laxdal. We got to hear from Logan Morin. And who is the player that, as Dan Biles must say, has the most juice, according to Lax, coming in to camp? All that and more on today's episode.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken. I'm an accredited media member going to Milano Cortina. I, have been able to cover women's hockey for a number of years, covering the WNBA. I just turned in my WNBA ballot. Awards ballot today, going to be at the game in Seattle. So come with a lot of different knowledge and here to talk Seattle Kraken with you today. So on today's episode, we are going to take you to the sights and sounds, well, really just the sounds of the training camp day 2. And we're going to hear from Derek Laxdal, our head coach of the Coachella Valley Firebirds. We're also going to hear from Logan Morin, and he had some interesting things to say with regard to how he felt about not getting a call up to the NHL last year and how that motivated his offseason. We'll talk also about where are they now, but really mostly just Ryan Donato. A lot of the guys left on that list from the inaugural season have played multiple seasons with the Seattle Kraken, including, of course, Ryan Donato, but any chance I get to talk about Ryan Donato, I'm going to take it. And then be aggressive. Who is the guy in camp that has already impressed Lax with how he came into camp, and why is getting that weight up a pretty big theme among these guys? Not really anything earth-shattering or surprising, especially with their age and how development goes, but still was clearly a focus for a lot of the guys at camp. So we got to hear from Derek Laxdal. He is our, again, head coach for the Coachella Valley Firebirds. This is his second season. If you listen to the show, our everydayers, if you will, you know I talked to Tad O'Had, our general manager and head coach of the Kansas City Mavericks, and been talking to him for several years, several seasons now. And I always ask him about the continuity that he experiences in the ECHL system that he runs compared to the AHL system that now Lax runs, compared to now the NHL system that Lane Lambert will run. And you'll hear Lax talk a little bit about that because Lane Lambert, of course, is the new guy on the block, so to speak. But there's always continuity. And that's something that Tad O'Had has said he hasn't always had in his pro career. And so I thought it was really interesting for Derek to break that down. Let's get to some snippets from what Derek had to say, including there are a few guys he was asked about, but also that he had glowing reviews about with regard to coming into training camp.
You guys ready to roll? So yeah, just a couple things before we start here. Just so I know if you noticed, we have a couple players that aren't on the ice with Miettinen and Bernier. So Bernier is recovering from an ACL injury that he sustained last year in junior hockey. So he's getting close to moving on as we go through training camp and the start of this junior season. So he's recovering from the ACL surgery. With Miettinen, he has an upper body injury that he sustained in Everett. So obviously we'll see how that goes over the next few days. And then obviously we'll keep you guys apprised of the situation so you guys have an idea what's going on with those two players. Well, the biggest thing that we obviously the first couple of days of skating and practice, training camp, rookie camp, whatever you want to call it, we're just trying to get these kids acclimated into the training camp situation. You know, they're going in with the new gear. They've gone through the fitness testing. You know, they got the nerves coming in the training camp. They want to show, they want to do well. We just addressed about talking like, you know, you want to leave an impression through rookie camp. So through the practices, you know, give it 100%. Make an impression, be in the conversation for maybe some exhibition games going into training camp. Now, going into the 2 games here in the weekend with Vancouver, Obviously, a couple kids are going to play both games, and some kids are only going to play one game. But we want to be in the conversation moving forward into training camp, because I believe there's 6 exhibition games, and you want to try and establish yourself. Now, for the kids that are going back to junior, we talked about this being an opportunity to kickstart your year for junior when you go home, right? For the players that are first or second, third year pros, this is an opportunity to, show yourself and get into an exhibition game and possibly get 2 and try and make the hockey club. That's what it's all about. You want that inner competition. Now, that being said, if you end up coming down to the American Hockey League with us in CV, you want to be in the conversation of being a call-up in every situation based on your play at training camp, leave a great impression on the new coaching staff, and then just take it day by day from there. Well, obviously, you saw today we were working on power play and penalty kill. We think that's important, giving the kids a little bit of information. But we want to see what the players can do naturally, see their hockey sense, see the effort, see the passion, see the compete. We didn't divulge into every system. We focused on a little bit of forecheck, neutral zone forecheck, touched on D zone, and then we're not going. We really don't have enough time to give them all that information for anything to sink in. So just enough to get through the games, and then once we get into training camp, Lane and his staff have a more in-depth approach of preparing the team for obviously the way they're going to play and the way we will play in CV. So we didn't want to give them too much, but we want to give them enough to survive the games, and we want to see what these kids have naturally. Yeah, it's important that the biggest thing out of the transition from a player from training camp and coming up from CV is when they come up, they don't have to worry about changing the system. And there's not a lot of huge changes. There's a couple tweaks here and there. But at the end of the day, if we can get these players on the same page of some of the foundation details that we want as an organization, it makes it a lot easier coming up. Yeah, there might be a little tweak on the penalty kill, the power play, nothing crazy. But at least when a player does come up, he's acclimated to the system, and it makes it easier for that transition from a Firebird to a Kraken.
So he talked about the first day being about acclimation. He wants a lot of these young guys to leave an impression. He talked about, especially thinking of the roster that he will have in the AHL, it's not necessarily about incorporating a bunch of new guys. They did a lot of that last season, and so now it's hitting the ground running. He wants to make this, a hockey club that is ready to perform. The first tune-up or, exhibition, the Prospects and Rookie Showcase, is happening tomorrow in Everett. And so you heard him also talk about focusing on basic things. He did talk a little bit about the power play and PK drills, but it's all about assessing what the players do naturally. And he said, every guy is going to get at least one game, or that's the impression that I got from him. And some will get a chance to skate more than once. And he talked about the healthy competition that comes in a training camp, and that, you want to show enough that you either get a position or you get a call up. And he talked about Yanni Newman a lot, and talked about him being bigger, faster, stronger, focusing on refining his body and his body type so that he can have the physique of a more traditional NHLer. So someone that I'm really excited to see in camp. And of course, he talked about Jacob Melanson and how aggressive he is. But I want to talk a little bit more about that later on the show. Another player that we got to hear from, Logan Morinson. And if you remember, our voice of the Firebirds, we definitely have talked about Lomo and, his approach to the game. I thought he said something interesting, though, about, we saw him in the NHL, I guess, 2 seasons ago now, but he felt some kind of way that he didn't really get a call back or a call up last season. Acknowledged that there was a lot going on. There certainly was a lot happening at the NHL level, but here's what he had to say after the second session or the second day of training camp?
It's pretty cliche. I mean, everyone says it, but obviously you want to gain that first few steps for sure. I feel like that was big for me, getting those first 3 steps faster and stronger too. So I put in tons of work this year and feel stronger than ever.
How do you?
Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Now, most people really don't have a good handle on their finances and their financial accounts. They don't know what their accounts are worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you end up leaving money on the table. That's why Monarch Money is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives, just like me. If you're putting off organizing your finances, guilty, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visualizations, and get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money. So whether you want to maximize your investments or you're not saving as much as you thought you were, Monarch Money can help you get back on track. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Thanks as always, Seattle hockey fans, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination, your late night listen, probably for most of you. Maybe you listen first thing in the morning or sometime in between. Either way, we're so grateful to have you as a part of our community. You probably have seen Joe is helping me get things coordinated when it comes to social media. We're expected to have some fun things that we're doing with King 5. I will be headed to Seattle tomorrow. I won't be at the game in Everett, but I will be at the game on Sunday at Kraken Community Iceplex. I will also be keeping eyes on everything happening WNBA playoffs on that day. Might even catch an NWSL game. Yes, I have a very ambitious schedule as always. Thank you for being a part of this journey. And if you want to hear about my coverage elsewhere, whether it's the Women's Hockey Report for the Locked On NHL channel, where we're covering PWHL and international women's hockey, whether it is for your Seattle Storm, I have a show called Tempestagi Talk. We usually go live on YouTube on Wednesdays. And Roberta Rodriguez, she's a contributor over at Forbes, originally from Brazil, hence why we use the Portuguese word tempestade for storm. You can check that all out. But let's continue on with what has become a nice little activity for me. Where are they now? That's right. We're talking about former Seattle Kraken rosters, and we're going to continue on talking about the inaugural season roster. And that means I get to talk about Ryan Donato. Ryan Donato, my P&V guy, my sandpaper guy, one of my favorite, if not my favorite member of the Seattle Kraken. And I just like how the guy plays. The way that Ryan Donato plays hockey, and yes, he's still in the NHL, the way Ryan Donato plays hockey is probably how this team this season is going to have to play hockey to win games. I know people have made comments saying, I think the Kraken are trying to rebuild that second season or whatever the case is, and maybe that's correct. But when you have a guy like Ryan Donato that can do so many things, he's great net front, he has historical goals for the Seattle Kraken. Now, while Vince Dunn might have the first Seattle Kraken goal at Climate Pledge Arena, Ryan Donato has the first ever Kraken goal in Seattle Kraken history. Ryan Donato, I just absolutely love his game. He is really into his faith, but Ryan Donato has been someone that I've enjoyed watching and that I root for. I don't always root for people, and not in a bad way. It's just like kind of out of sight, out of mind, but not Ryan Donato. I've always been a fan of his. I wanted him to be a forever Kraken, make Seattle his forever home. It didn't quite happen that way, but you know what? That's okay. He is with the Chicago hockey team. and he, has been a part of free agency talks and, trying to figure out what his worth is. Ryan Donato, a centerman. Now, he came to the Seattle Kraken as a free agent on September 13th, 2021. He was traded to San Jose, where he came from again, as a free agent. He was with Minnesota for a while, played in the Boston organization. He's a Boston boy. He signed as a free agent in Chicago on July 1st, 2023. I remember that offseason. I wanted Ryan on our team so bad. It just didn't really work out. In the inaugural season, Ryan Donato played 74 games for the Seattle Kraken, 16 goals, 15 assists for 31 points. He was a minus 13, but he got it together in the next season and was a plus 16 with 27 points. So a little bit of a drop in that productivity. Missed a few games. He averaged 13 minutes, 48 seconds time on ice in the inaugural season. And again, he has moved on to Chicago since he couldn't find a spot on the Seattle Kraken. I would love to see him back. I, for one, would love to see him back at some point in time. Obviously, if it worked out, Ryan Donato is the kind of guy that epitomizes, and probably always will epitomize, Kraken hockey, baby. But other players that were also on this roster, and we talked about all of them. So actually, I think maybe I'll just talk about Ryan Donato today. I personally feel good about that. But other guys that we've talked about before, Morgan Geekie, also left the Seattle Kraken in free agency that same season that Ryan Donato left. Morgan Geekie, a right wing and centerman, coming off of, as I mentioned in our Where Are They Now expansion draft edition, coming off his best season. Morgan Geekie, he went over to Boston, actually, where Ryan Donato has been for a while. I remember someone on a Pacific Division Locked On Kraken podcast being like, well, I hope it works out with you and Donato. I'm like, all right, relax. I'll take him. I never was super high on Geekie. I know the Geek Squad, a lot of people were really into it. I thought his game was pretty solid. 73 games in the inaugural season, 7 goals, 15 assists, 22 points overall, a minus 16. But he got it together also in the next year. Geekie, Donato, on that, third, fourth line, they were really crushing it. And oftentimes were carrying the team, keeping the momentum going just enough so other people could step up. But that's the game that they perfect, that they do really well. As I mentioned, the best season of his career in 77 games, 33 goals, 24 assists for 57 points for the Boston Bruins in 24-25. Morgan Geekie signed as a free agent in Boston July 1st of 2023. He was claimed by the Seattle Kraken from the Carolina Hurricanes in that expansion draft. Other guys that are on this list here for the inaugural season, kind of doing a Where Are They Now? Brandon Tanev, Will Borgen, Carson Soucy, Yanni Gourde. I still get a lot of alerts about Yanni Gourde. People saying maybe buyer's remorse in Tampa Bay. Oliver Bjorkstrand, had a weird injury or illness or something like that. Yanni Gourde back with Tampa Bay. Vince Dunn, again, another trivia question, scored the first ever Kraken game at Climate Pledge Arena. Again, in the inaugural season, they hit the road first. There was like a little bit of a COVID mini outbreak that happened with the team, or at least a lot of positive tests around that time. They played Vegas in that early stretch of the season. Jordan Eberle, who is our captain now, it was mentioned, I guess Berkeley Catton, right? I think it was Berkeley Catton that mentioned that he was one of the veterans that did come around while some of the young guys were skating unofficially, not an official practice, but skating on their own, trying to get ready for this camp coming up here. Same thing with Jamie Alexiak. Jared McCann is on that list, and Adam Larson. So I think you can see why I'm not going to dive into those guys. Did I mean and intend to this only being me talking about Ryan Donato, maybe like yes and no, but either way, we're rocking with it. But talking about that sandpaper, baby, let's go. I want to actually take you back to something that we heard from Derek Laxdal about a particular player that's in camp and that I think can embody some of the sandpaper. And if that's how the Kraken are going to have to play, does he become a prospect that maybe shoots up when it comes to the priority either of players to make the NHL roster, but more likely the first crop, if you will, to get a call up? Let's hear. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you are ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers, if you place your first $5 bet, you will get $300 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. You can use that on your player props, same game parlays, even jump into the live action as it unfolds. FanDuel makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right. I talked about my P&V guy, Ryan Donato, and it's perfect because Jacob Melanson, Derek Laxdal was asked about Jacob Melanson, and he had a lot of sandpapery kind of things to describe his game. Let's play that clip from earlier on day 2 of training camp, if you will, the rookie portion of the 2025 Seattle Kraken training camp.
Just look at him. He is a killer. Jacob is a prototypical power forward. Like, he's a type of player that if he's forechecking you, and he's going to put you through the boards. He's going to have a stick on puck. He's the type of player that nobody wants to play against. And those players are important on a franchise and in an organization, because when you put those players in your lineup, when you drop the puck, those players are looking across the line to see who they're lining up against. And he's the one guy that I think over the time in his game, he's really learned how to be aggressive in his play, his speed, his strength, and just, he's really taken a step in the leadership role through our organization. He's really taken a step in the conditioning, and he's really taken a step in how effective his game can be, and when to be physical, when to go through bodies. And, obviously it's going to keep on growing, but he's that type of player that players.
Derek Laxdal. That was Derek Laxdal talking about Jacob Melanson. He talked about this. He's a killer. He's someone that, is tough to play against, that folks aren't going to want to play against. He talked about he's the kind of guy that's going to put you through the boards. And then he talked about why having players like that, not necessarily enforcers in the way a lot of people think about it as old school hockey, but someone with some sandpaper, who has some P&V, who is going to funk it up. Not afraid to get a little messy, not afraid to send a message. Carson Soucy, I think, could play that role. Will Borgen every once in a while. I mean, Brandon Tanev definitely sent a message in his first game back to Climate Pledge Arena. In a game like hockey, it is important to have those guys. So Melanson, I'm going to keep an eye on Melanson. I cannot wait to get to Seattle tomorrow. Keep an eye on Melanson. But I love hearing that we have some aggressive guys, that there's some P&V, some sandpaper, some grit, some moxie, some juice, some jam, whatever you want to call it. The Seattle Kraken needs some of that, because you can forgive certain things when at least the effort is there. And at times, quite honestly, that was lacking in a big way from the Seattle Kraken last season. I'm going to call it a wrap. Again, send good vibes to Joe, who continues to help us out behind the scenes. Also, if you are so inclined and you want to learn more about how I feel about women's hockey players taking pay cuts to perhaps get their organization under the salary cap, Rachel Donner and I talk about that on the most recent Women's Hockey Report, including breaking down what has been reported about the PWHL schedule. We still don't officially have it yet, but we have heard some murmurings. So you can check out the Women's Hockey Report that lives on the Locked On NHL channel. We also have our own TikTok account, so make sure you're following that. And of course, you can follow Black Rosie Media, where a lot of the clips will also live. But our psycho killer, Jacob Melanson. Yes, that is one of the things that we are posting on social media, which is why I have talking heads in my head right now. A reminder to be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. We hold fast. We stay true. We get some grit and sandpaper for this Seattle Kraken team. We say, let's go Kraken. And I will catch you on the next episode, or at Climate Pledge Arena, or at Kraken Community Iceplex come Sunday. Peace out, everybody.